Eliza.
Week. We're gonna be talking about the
Kopish!
We'll be talking about the
Butchery!
Do you think that's funny?
Squiggly.
Do you find it amusing that we'll be talking about the
Chaos Vanish!
Yes, we're also gonna be talking about
The Clutches of Eternity! Cruising by.
the
Axe!
the
Neckbet!
and we will definitely be spending a lot of time talking about
She Who Mauls!
They said penis.
Eliza's gameplay is best described as a specialist. Most of her tools do something different from one another, in turn making her a jack of all trades, but only a master of a few. For example, you won't get much out of the effects of some moves, such as Dive of Horrors or Lady of Slaughter. The best moves, however, would be Uppercut, with high odds of landing a lengthy stun, and especially Chaos Vanish. This move is the peak buff removal tool in the entire game, instantly getting rid of all opponent buffs in a single hit, plus field block added for good measure. Special notice has to go to the segment blockbusters. Upon using one, you will enter segment mode, where you won't flinch to the enemy attack for a couple seconds. It's generally a combo extender, but can also generate openings as her charge attack staggers, and is quite safe. Most of the time anyway. In terms of Marquee, she has it pretty rough, because they rely on teammate deaths, the difference being that one recovers health and the other grants meter. The problem with this is that on Rifts, having teammate deaths is downright horrible, because you immediately lose 200 points upon doing so. The popular opinion considers the health recovery superior, but unless you care for that pretty border, you're better off not investing in any Marquee. In Denile is difficult to rate, as her ability is actually decent conceptually, a debuff cleanse upon triggering segment plus immunity and armor. For Rifts, that's actually pretty good, as immunity is a very desirable buff, and in Denile is the only Eliza to have access to it. But unfortunately, her bronze stats hold her back from drawing her potential. Plus, she also ends up being too gimmicky and less efficient compared to the established meta, bronze stats aside.
You should be in this boat!
Decrypted is a tragedy of a variant. She used to have an immediately great conversion ability, but instead was replaced with a dogshit bonus damage per alive opponent. The problem with this is Decrypted's attack is terrible, and this ability is incredibly basic and ineffective. You could say it's fine for beginners, but far better options exist.
I'm going to scream for at least 13 seconds.
As pretty looking Tomb and Gloom may be, she unfortunately doesn't make for a great variant. She's best suited for an offensive support, but her biggest problem is having too many debuffs in her ability pool. Heal block being the biggest offender in my opinion, since you can just Chaos Vanish and get the same output. Additionally, the randomized nature of the debuffs makes her generally less reliable, since you may try to get Hex and Curse, but keep getting fucked with Wither. Also, the evasion is meh.
I'm drowsy.
Bloody Valentine has an interesting recovery gimmick by using special moves. This favors their repeated use, as it serves for her main method of healing any damage, and it also works when opponents make use of them. Blockbusters have a similar interaction, where if either player uses one, Bloody gains meter. She is generally niche for Rifts. Much like in Denile, she gets outclassed by other stuff, and has poor base stats, which in total brings her down several steps. And on defense, even with recovery and meter, she'll end up being disposed of quick.
Do I look like I know what a JPEG is?
Scarlet Viper is a decent bleeder, as each time she triggers segment, she'll inflict a bleed on each side, plus she'll gain enrage out of any debuff inflicted to her. Now upon hearing the premise of self-bleeding, that already gives off blood drive cool vibrations, but the differences lie in the character at hand. For one, Scarlet gains longer enrages out of any debuff and not just bleed, and she can temporarily patch her own bleeds with a taunt. There's also the matter of segment creating better and safer openings than Painwheel. It's nonetheless an undesirable blowback.
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
Red Velvet is currently one of the most desirable variants to use in Rifts, because of how easily she inflicts Hex, and it lasting 15 seconds. She comes with low attack, making her an offense support more than anything, and against some variants, just hexing them won't cut it, but overall you wanna have her so you can dispatch of Immoral Fibers for example, with relative ease. She may seem simple on the outside, but the simpler abilities can sometimes make for the most practical. Diva Intervention effectively fuses Bloody Valentine's meter gain and recovery within segment mode, making it so attacks both leech health and meter. For all intents and purposes, you'll be swimming in tier 3 blockbusters if you choose to go for segment attacks. Also, thanks to her good healing and easy meter, balanced with an average attack, people often pit her against Don't Poke the Bureau nodes. In fact, high-ranked Rift players choose to make her critless for the sole purpose of abusing the regeneration without triggering Pinwell's Marquee, so without question that bumps her a couple points upwards. Inner Pieces revolves around team building, as she gains buffs depending on the teammate's element, and she's also capable of transferring any buffs from herself to any teammate via tag-in. This can open up a fair share of interesting strategies, but you also have to be careful what you pick. Having phantom threats and another light element, for example, is pretty good, as the former will make excellent use of Blessing, and having an air element on the team makes Inner Pieces a good healer. Needless to say, to make the most of her, you do have to consider your approaches carefully. Though I'd argue the best course possible is the air element strat.
I missed the part where that's my problem.
Bloodbath is one of the rare cases where you could have a complete dogshit stat build and still have decent probabilities at winning, but build her anyway for the love of God. Not only does she bleed her foes, but gains regen out of converting a self-inflicted bleed, and this applies to any bleed possible, meaning stuff like Bad Hair Day or Rusty would fare incredibly poorly. Not only can she chip out opponents, she also remains healthy while doing so, unlike Scarlet Viper. Also, for both of them, I haven't touched a potential ICU counter, but that's because Eliza has access to cursing her kit, be it with Segment Smite or Burst. So fortunately, they bypass this obstacle that otherwise would be bothersome.
Perhaps the same could be said of all religions.
Conceptually speaking, Lapis Luxury doesn't sound too bad. The idea of reversing health percentages has a lot of potential, but in execution it's not as easy. It implies that you let yourself get damaged to about 10% and survive it, and having the tier 3 blockbuster ready to use. Two conditions that take a while to meet and could be fucked in one way or another. It's recommended to carry a Trauma Center Valentine, so you don't accidentally die. But the biggest downside is that it's a one-use only ability, which to be fair, if it wasn't that way, she'd be downright broken on the right hands. But at the same time, being one use only reduces her utility massively. Yet another unfortunate case of a pretty palette with a mediocre ability.
Loop zoop.
Alright, I know everyone expects me to shit on Mommy Dearest, because she slowly but surely kills herself when using specials. But I'm willing to at least give her a chance. For one, she can gain meter really fast, 2 specials and you already have a tier 3 ready. Plus with each segment blockbuster she gains Blessing, prolonging her time on the field for a little while. But there's a reason people keep shitting on her. Despite the incredibly easy meter, she has to damage herself to get it, which goes without saying that's not a good thing at all for rifts. And for prize fights, she'll just do average with her passable attack. So yeah, a pretty weak diamond that could probably issue at 3rd revision.
Think you can do a better job, smart guy? We'd like to see you try.
Standout is a walking curse, and I mean that in a good way. She has about 50% chance of instantly absorbing enemy buffs and turning them into meter. This ability is a godsend for a lot of buff heavy nodes, such as Frost Armor and anything involving Evergreen Evil. And with a decent self-recovery, plus great base stats, the recoil damage from either of these won't be as effective. I will say though, much like Mean One, outside of buff heavy fields, she won't do anything substantial that other Elizas would do. But inside these, she'll decimate the competition. Outstanding diamond in all aspects. Oh my god. Holy shit, I finally got past the halfway point of this guide series. Well, so far we only have about 7 characters to go, next being Beowulf as you can see. It's a ride alright, but I'm grateful for all the support this series has been getting. The fact that people genuinely like this series, find it helpful, enjoy the editing, all that shit, for me it's what makes it worth it. Obviously I'm far from done, but at least knowing I'm done with half of the cast is good news for sure, and something that will motivate me going forward. Also, I can't help but feel I forgot to reference something in this video. And who cares, it's probably not that important, maybe for the next one. As always, thank you guys for watching and I'll see you next time.